Here's another Sachem conversation. I'm Chris Vaccaro with Joyce Brown. I'm excited to chat with Joyce, who Sachem, taught here and coached here for decades and left her impact, just like many of the people that I've spoken to before. And I'm really excited to chat with you, Joyce. Thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Great. Always excited to talk Sachem and history and all the people that you're going to mention undoubtedly that it's impacted you, the Risa Zanders of the world, the Tom Sabatells, and so many others. These conversations, as I like to say, just to paint a picture for folks that may not have heard these before, it's an oral history project with the history from people who made it, people that lived it, people who helped make Sachem what it was in those very formidable years in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when it was really not yet having an identity, and then was so dominant that its identity was excellence. And I think folks like you help make that happen. And it's a special conversation for me to be able to talk about why and how and your development and the things that impacted you. So this project means a digital archive of the conversations at the Sachem Public Library and at the libraries at Sachem North and Sachem East, as well as text transcriptions of the discussion, so that hopefully decades from now, generations from now, when people want to go, oh, who helped make this place special? You don't have to look too far. And so you grew up here, went here, love this place. Your family loves this place. Talk about just growing up in Sachem. What was that like?
Everything. First of all, thank you for doing this, for putting this time together to show what's important. It's always been important to me. I kiddingly always say I bleed black and gold, live, breathe, sleep, eat, and drink black and gold. And it's 100% true. I'm one of 6. We all walked to school basically, other than Sagamore, and a year or two at Parsnip Pond. I'm number 3 in the lineup. Basically, we had a Brown at Sachem between graduating in 68 to 78. So there was one of us, 6 of us in that time span. I have 4 brothers, 1 sister, and I sleigh rided on the hill at Gate Lot. I have a picture of my brother jumping with our horse Chauncey, the split rail fence in front of Gate Lot. I did the recreation programs. We did the recreation programs that Sachem provided in the woods between Gate Lot and Sachem with Mr. McNeil. It's basically every moment of my life.
And you said so many, to me, key things, trigger points of history. First of all, there's no more school at Gate Lot. It's an empty building. Sad, obviously. Parsnip, that is could you talk about that? A lot of people have no idea what that means, other than Parsnip, the pub over there at the lake. That road that is right in front of the actual bar now is called Schoolhouse Road. And it was an annex that they used for students at a time when they were like, where are we going to put these kids? This thing's all new to us. Can you explain what that was like? And what years were you there?
Went there as a first grader. So I actually have the school photo, which is kind of funny. The class, we all look like a bunch of, very sad looking little children. But we went to Parsnip Pond, and I believe Don Fenner, Mr. Fenner, was the principal. And my first time getting on a bus, because we walked to school. And so it was interesting. Not just Parsnip Pond for a year, as Sachem was growing and exploding. We all had to wear dresses as girls. The dress code eased up. My senior year, we were allowed to wear slacks. But my brothers all went to school with a shirt and a tie every day. And I have 4 brothers, so you can do the math on ties and so forth. So Parsnip Pond was part of it. At Gate Lot, it was Mrs. Bianca. Good morning, Miss Bianca. Every day when you saw her. So it was very, it was our normal. Some things that highlight me that I always will remember from Gate Lot is a board above Mrs. Bianca's office was a paddle, and it said the Board of Education. And I remember that. I don't know why. Knock on wood, it was never used on me. I can't vouch for my brothers though. And in the gym, I remember something along this. Hopefully, I can get it right. Every lady is a girl, but not every girl is a lady.
Wow.
So somehow I kind of remember those things coming out of Gate Lot. Again, it's in a different time. But yeah, very different, very good.
Different time period. Yeah, you may not see those things on the walls in schools today.
No, I don't think so. Hopefully
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. So you obviously go into high school, and at that point you became an athlete. Where did the sports in your life start to take shape? Was it before that point, where when you was just messing around as a kid, and then you loved athletics?
Messing around as a kid, totally
Yeah.
messing around. Physical education at Gate Lot with John Cassess.
Hmm.
I remember hitting a
John
home
Cassell,
run during
another big
phys ed
name.
class.
John Cassell, class of '60. An educator for his
Yes,
entire life, a principal in Sachem eventually, and a three-sport athlete as well. Just a very proud alum. That's a great name. You have all these, again, these names and these experiences that I'm seeing right now. This is what's shaping your love of this place.
absolutely, absolutely, 100%. And then my brothers got involved in athletics. Again, a very different culture for a young female in the late 60s, for me at least. And I just knew that I wanted to do that. I wanted to be involved in sports. There weren't that many avenues for that. But I was that annoying little sister that, trailed and went everywhere and did everything. Give you another example. My couple of my brothers were Eagle Scouts, and one of the requirements they had at that time, and I'm not really sure the dynamics of it, was they needed to get involved in a church. And they went to the Methodist church at Five Corners, and got involved with the MYF, Methodist Youth Fellowship. And they were having a blast. And I'm like, well, I want to be part of that too. Who was the leader of the MYF at that time was Tom Sabatel. So we did retreats to West Meadow Beach, and things that we did that were. So I was the tag along little sister for a lot of stuff, and it worked out. And then junior high, played a few sports at Sagamore. Got to the high school. Well, what is now, is it Sachem? What, Samoset now, right?
Set, yes.
Right, Samoset now. Was there, and then made it to North, which is North now, was my high school. I graduated from there the first year it opened. But there were a lot of people. I used to go watch my brother's soccer games when Don Woolley was the coach. Frank Schmidt came. Frank Schmidt was my teacher. Mr. Batewell was my teacher. So these were people that I got to see on the field and in the classroom, and they were iconic then as they are today. So it was pretty charmed life.
Pretty simple to see why you
Yeah.
became an educator. And I don't even have to ask that question
Mhm.
because you were already impacted so much by
So
all
much.
the people you mentioned. So this was a no-brainer. By the time you graduated and had to pick a career, you knew teacher, coach.
I knew, but here's where the differences come in. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a phys ed teacher. I wanted to be a teacher. That was my life. Um, Unfortunately, during Regents Week of my junior year, my dad passed away at a Sachem School Board meeting. And again, I'm one of six. Two were in college. One was in college. My brother Jody graduated that year. So there was a lot going on in dynamics. And so going into my senior year, again, I knew what I wanted to do, didn't quite know how to get there. And I remember it was springtime of my senior year, and Roy Elberfeld, the guidance counselor, called me down. He said, the representative from Central College in Iowa is here. I've told them all about you. That's where you're going to college. So I'm like, okay. So I showed up sight unseen in Pella, Iowa at Central College, a D3 program, which lives, breathes, sleeps, eats, and drinks athletics, and had 4 incredible years there. So it's pretty cool.
I was going to ask, what was the connection with Iowa? So that was almost just developed for you and you ran with the storyline.
I showed up, before Labor Day with a suitcase, and I had no idea where Iowa was on the map.
Right.
It was just, it fell into my lap. Obviously, a really good human being in my life, Mr. Elberfeld, recognized I needed a push and pushed me literally into the Midwest. And it was an amazing 4 years. Athletics. If you've ever been in that D3 environment with, the whole town shuts down on Friday night for a football game or a girls basketball game, which was 6-man basketball. And then Saturday, everybody shows up for the college football game. And Sunday, the whole town shuts down. That's what I lived in for 4 years. So it just kept everything going, fueled the fire.
And even before we talk a little bit more specific about college, at Sachem, you were playing volleyball, softball, you were a cheerleader.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were a 3-sport athlete, the generation right before you didn't even have that ability as young females to play. And still, you didn't have as many opportunities as the generation after you, and especially the young ladies today. Obviously, I'd love to talk about Title IX and just the idea of fighting for rights for females in sports. It's you lived that expansion, and still, we're still clawing at the opportunities that weren't necessarily there, but you helped build what was to come after you. And what was that like growing up in that period?
So what first impacted me, Title IX, was in college. My senior year of college, where I noticed the changes, and they were very subtle, but when you're practicing for a sport, the male athletes would get what was called a roll. So they would go to the equipment window and they would get their towel and their shorts and their socks and their t-shirt for practices. We didn't have that. But my senior year, we got a roll. It doesn't sound like much, but it was like all of a sudden what the guys were getting, we got too. We had a varsity jacket. We were privy to the same practice sessions. Everything changed my senior year of college.
Mm-hmm.
Then was hired by Sachem, which is another story, but got hired at Sachem, and it was almost a step back at first. It was still evolving, and to come into that and to be, I'll give you a quick example. So my first year teaching, Risa Zander asked me to score the basketball game, to be the official scorekeeper, to go to all the games with the girls, the varsity and JV basketball team. Patty Metcalf was the JV coach. And so I would travel to Brentwood, wherever they were playing, and I would do the book for the 2 games, and that was it. And I was paid more as the scorekeeper for the varsity and JV games for the season than the varsity and JV girls basketball coach combined my first year. So the evolution was a little slower, I think, at Sachem, or at that time in that area, but it happened. I give Tom Sabatella a ton of credit, Risa Zander, Patty Metcalf, the people that really put it out there and said, we need to put this in the right place. So I was very grateful and good recipient of that. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask a bit more about Risa, just because she is a legend in her own right for so many reasons. Even take Title IX aside, what she did as a basketball coach, what she built as a dynasty-like program, the quality of the girls that went on to play at high level at college. She's amazing. I mean, she was coaching on the boys' side with Dom Savino at Santa Mauritius. Like, the stuff that she did was pretty cool. But really, as a pioneer and someone who paved the way, you must have looked at that and said, this is good for all of us, but she's got something going on here.
We were all rookies, basically, but she was more of a stronger-willed rookie and was able to navigate things that I wasn't able to do. So she put herself out there. From a coaching standpoint, again, doing that scorebook, so sitting there, having that front row seat to all those games and watching Pat Metcalf coach and Risa Zander coach and work and interact with the young girls and with the officials. I watched Risa argue a clock. There was like a second and a half left on the clock. And I watched her argue with an official if it was a full second or half a second left on the clock. And this went on for a period of time. And the official, when it was all over, she got what she was arguing for. And the official came over and he said, she's right. I've never really seen someone kind of argue a point like that about a second and a half and how much that meant. Watching the dynamics of those two women with their athletes, how they interacted, how they spoke to them, how they spoke to the officials, how they spoke with the parents, was a class in itself for me. You know, it was a front row seat classroom for me for all those years. So I was very fortunate to have that opportunity.
And let's rewind and talk college. Going to Iowa must have been an eye opener, but at this point, you probably look back and go, what an amazing way to see other parts of the country and learn a different perspective. And has that helped shape your, vision of the country all these years later?
It is totally shaped my opinion of everything. I've always said I'm Long Island, born, raised, lived, and die here. This is it. Those 4 years were eye-opening for me to see a totally different culture, 18 churches in this small town, all the dynamics that goes on with that. I had no intention of coming back to Long Island. I had such a good 4 years out there. They offered me a position, and I was going to stay there because the only thing missing to me in Iowa was salt water.
Mm.
So it was where I was going to stay. But another part to that story was a month before my college graduation, my mom passed away suddenly. So flew home for the funeral, and I remember being in my home in Lake Ronkonkoma, and all these Sachem administrators were there. And I don't remember who it was, but I have a feeling it was Mr. Brisson. Walked up to me and said, "Come see me when you graduate." And so I was like, okay. So went back to Iowa, came back a couple of weeks later, and then went through a quasi interview, with a few people, Mr. Ray Fell, Mr. Brisson, a few other people in there, and that's where I stayed. And again, that first year, I thought I'm just going to stay. We're going to stay home for a year till things settle out in Lake Ronkonkoma, and then go back to Iowa. And that didn't happen, obviously. So things have a weird way of working out.
And from 75 to 04, Sachem was home as a place to work, not just a place of who you are. So that must have been extra special to be. You're really one of the first female alumni to be hired, let alone coach at Sachem. So the idea of that didn't really exist outside of young men. So did you think about that as like, hey, this is pretty cool? Or you're like just excited and happy that you got a job, you're home, and you're in Sachem? It's not that you're thinking about being a pioneer at that point.
No, I'm just trying to get through day to day. I'm just trying to figure it out and try not to trip over myself too much. The dynamics with the coaching was the six of us, we all swam. We all did, swimming lessons, and we all lifeguarded and everything. That doesn't mean I'm a swimmer. It just means I swam. And I remember Mr. Rothenberg walking up to me going into that first year, and he said, "You swim, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You're now the new girls varsity swim coach." And you're not in a position to say no, or you really might want to rethink that. You just run out to the library and get Doc Counselman's book, basically The Joy of Swimming. You start just whatever networking you can to learn how to organize a 2-hour swim practice and what you're trying to get out of it, and how to technique. And you look at Mike Westcott and you just, wish you could clone him, because he's just a wealth of knowledge. And there wasn't, the only 2 indoor pools in Suffolk County in that time period was Connecticut and West Islip. So here Sachem opens up a pool in the early 70s and needed to develop a program. So I was lucky. I inherited some young ladies that made a commitment to what was the Sachem Swim Club at the time, and had put a few years in. You've met a few of them: Laura Conlon, Debbie Meyer, the Gami sisters, the DeSimone sisters, so many of them. And Barry Roffer was the head swim coach for the Sachem Swim Club under the AAU umbrella. And he left at some point to go over to Three Village School District, but the foundation was there. based on what he had created. It was my job to keep it going and learn a lot. And not just swimming, diving. You're doing gymnastics in midair. That's a whole different breed of animal than a swimmer. And it was fun. It was fun learning about it, and hopefully I didn't mess it up too bad. And gets now, I live, breathe, sleep, eat, and drink swimming. It's still part of my life. My daughter's a competitive swimmer. She's a coach. My son-in-law is a competitive swimmer. He coaches over at the university. Yeah, I'm still there. So it's been good.
Around those same times, especially early on in your career, there was the Fred Fissaro, as you mentioned, Frank Schmidt and Bill Batewell. There's Jack Mahoney and Ken Friedheim. And we've already spoken about Risa. Just one program builder after another that used each other to get better. What was the environment like for you to see all of that? But also, I mean, you're probably trying to channel some of that in swimming and then softball as well.
Right. So again, the growth was tremendous. So I remember I was coaching softball and being allowed to go to Cherry Hill, New Jersey for a softball clinic for the weekend. That was unheard of, that female coaches were going to Cherry Hill. Bates was going, other people were going. So it was eye-opening to sit in a conference room with these other people that were passionate about softball and learn from them. And again, that was a change, a huge change for us, or for me. I remember going to talking with Fred one day, and he's probably never going to remember this. And I was complaining or whining or whatever about something in my program. This was softball, and after him listening to me, as only Fred can say, he was something like, "It's your fault," and I was like, a little taken back at first, like, "What do you mean it's my fault? I'm, complaining to you. I expect sympathy." He goes, "It's your program. You run your program. If there's a problem in your program, it's your fault." And I was like, again, those were those light bulb moments that go off and go, I didn't think that part through. So having Fred as that mentor, Bates, again, going from he was my teacher to now as a colleague, never been able to call him Bill. To go to that, and it's softball in March, and I'm dressed like Nanook of the North. I have more clothing on than anyone human should have. He's out there in his shorts and his coaching jacket and his varsity jacket, and I was like, "Bates, aren't you cold?" And he goes, "If I'm not cold, they're not cold." And then you go, okay. So again, if you're learning by osmosis, by observation, by talking, by being spoken to sharply at times, by making mistakes. And Linda Otten, I mean, gosh, the woman was a phenomenal athlete. And when she would mysteriously show up at a softball practice and pitch a softball that I couldn't even see. She was stunning, and you could learn so much from her in just a 5-minute encounter. So I was very lucky to have those mentors. Whether they knew it or not, I was watching them. A lot of us were.
And all those people we're talking about, all of a sudden the programs are winning. And then they're winning championships. And then we had this crop of students by the late 70s into mid 80s that were just out of the world successful, not only just in sports. I always like to stress, talking about CEOs and doctors and lawyers and superintendents. I mean, just an incredible group of people. Are you all sitting there as educators in these buildings going, this place is a university. It is just on steroids at this point in terms of population growth, enrollment growth, and then the success. Everything just happened perfectly at the right time.
Yeah, it was so many different points coming to a head there. It was the excellence in coaching, the Title IX becoming that, the athletes buying into more, the parents, the families behind that saying, okay, we're giving up dinner tonight as a family so that you can go to practice, or all day Saturday you're at a athletic event. Where those, in my growing up times at Sachem, we had dinner every night at 5:30. It was a given that you were home and having dinner as a family. A lot of that changes when you get into the different athletic demands and expectations of you in more recent years. So yeah, it was fun to be part of that, to see the changes. To the kids had to buy into it, though. I mean, and the parents had to also. And watching down the expressway, to drive down the expressway and to see so many hundreds of young people playing soccer on a Saturday it's just fascinating. I love that. To go to open gyms, to go to clinics, to see Sunday the gym is open and people are playing field hockey or going over those skills. It's the weight room being open and available to every athlete, that you can just go in and work out is part of that, a big chunk of it.
By the time you're ready to retire, the community has changed a bit, and they're talking about reconfiguration, they call it. Some
Right.
people, I call it a split, when you
Yeah.
create a second location for people to go to school, and it changes the dynamic of the community. You and many others, all of the people we spoke about, said it's a good time to retire. The pension works out and the years are there. What are you all thinking? What are you thinking at that moment? And I can't believe it's 20 years ago, basically, at this point, almost. It's a different Sachem than what it was.
Yeah. I want to use the word fortunate to retire early. It's a long, complicated story, but because of being a lifeguard for your municipality back in the 70s. But at the same time, I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go. And the situation was that it was time. I remember walking, because the last day of school, you have that mandatory meeting in the cafeteria where all the faculty gets together, and 12 o'clock we're dismissed. And I remember walking down the hall through the gym lobby, and again, not walking on the center of the gym lobby. We know that there's a place that you're not allowed to walk in the gym lobby. And I walked down there, and I just was like, just keep going, don't look back, just keep going. And it was hard to walk out of that building and know, but you know what? Entered, as Bill Batewell said, the world of options, the age of options. And I've still kept in coaching and teaching. Worked at Suffolk Community College for a little bit. I've done all these other fun jobs and not only careers, just adventures, fun adventures, and some not so fun. But that's to be at the age of options, and to look back at my time at Sachem, those 29 years, and go, wow, I am one of the luckiest people around. And it's very proud of that. No one can take that away from me. So, or my brothers or my sister. So,
and on that same note, what do you define your legacy as at Sachem? Your piece of the puzzle that you helped provide and impact people as well.
You know what? I don't know. I'm hoping that it's friendships. I really hope that that's the most important. As a high school senior, one of my teachers was Sue Fife and Myrna Gordon. Then you go from being student-teacher relationship to colleagues. We're colleagues now. Frank Schmidt was my teacher. Bill Batewell was my teacher. So to change that dynamic from that relationship to colleagues, and then I look at Sue Fife and Myrna Gordon today. We have lunch every couple of months, and they are just two of the most amazing human beings. And how lucky am I that I got to spend time with them and have that friendship and relationship with them. So if Sachem gave me anything, it's the longevity of friendships that I'll never, ever get rid of. I hope not, at least. So very lucky for that.
Well, I appreciate the conversation, everything you've provided, everything you've experienced and lived. I think it's a great Sachem experience, and I'm really excited that we were able to provide.
You didn't make me sing the Sachem fight song, so I'm really glad about that.
No, I should do that to other people now that you bring that up.
I would like to see that. I know all the words. So.
Yeah, and I got to get Pat Metcalf, and I have to talk to other people that you mentioned. I have a long list of folks. So
oh my gosh, you're definitely on the right path with that. Again, appreciate what you're doing. this is my heart. Sachem is my soul. And, as I said to you in the summer when I met you, when my brother was at the school, my dad's plot name is in the front of that building. That will always be my building. And, to walk in there every day and my brain say, good morning, Dad, that kind of thing. That's cool. To get up on that stage at the dedication of that new building in Sachem North with Mr. Dunham standing next to me is an honor, and how lucky am I that I got to be part of that as a student, and then to be on a different path. It was cool. So thank you for allowing me to say that. So
Yeah,
cool.
It's Sachem's in your DNA. Nothing better.
It is. Live, breathe, sleep, eat. That's it.
All right. Well,
thank you.
I'm gonna close it out here, and thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.